Well, thank you for inviting me. For 20 years, I've been collecting pre-radio era songs and poems about Idaho that say something about the culture of early Idaho. And by early, I mean before radio came in around 1923. Why radio? Well, because radio is like cell phones, one of those mixed blessings, you know. It's the great preserver and the great destroyer. And as far as music's concerned, the great folklorists of America never got to Idaho. Thank you. Must be a guitar player. That's having grown up in West Virginia and having heard since a little kid countless event ballads, story songs about real people and events. When I moved to Idaho 20 some years ago, I then started the search, and I found right away that you can count on like 3 fingers the number of true Idaho event ballads that anybody knew. They got lost along the way. And I can go on and on about why I think that happened, but it did happen. And that set off my search for those songs, and here we are about 100 plus songs later. And if I can't find a song that I have a great event that would make a good song, then I ask one of my singer-songwriter friends around the state to write a song. If that fails, well, it comes to me, right? So we're going to do a series of songs here that are relevant to the Hells Canyon country. As you can see how I define that, the area. It's basically any drainage basin that goes into Hells Canyon. And you're down here on little outside of that circle, but you can't tell the story of Hells Canyon without talking about Lewis and Canyon. All right. So the first whites to see any part of the canyon, of course, were Lewis and Clark. But you know, only a couple of those guys got up as far as the Salmon confluence, and that's hardly even in the canyon yet. It took the second traverse of Idaho in summer of 1811, fall of 1811, by the Astorian party. Yes, the John Jacob Astor, the fur guy, and that was across the Snake River Plain and Hells Canyon and the Blue Mountains, and they all just about died. It kicked their butts. And on the guide was a French-Canadian Native American guide, just like Lewis and Clark had, and he had a wife, just like a Native American wife, like Lewis and Clark. She became known as Marie Dorian, or Walk's Far Woman. And Marie, I'm telling you what, she was more amazing than Sacagawea, because she had 2 little kids and she was pregnant when she made that trip. And their trip through Idaho was barely getting through alive, barely getting out of Hells Canyon alive. And then 2 years later, Astor sent her husband, a bunch of trappers, back to Payette, and she watched all the men get slaughtered by Indians. And she had to go across the Blue Mountains in the winter a second time, but this time all by herself with 2 little kids. Don't you think that deserves a song? Through the Snake River country of South Idaho, the wind's always singing wherever you go. A sense you're not alone, a feeling in the air. Walks far woman, her spirit is everywhere. The Dorians were Metis, French and Iowa, sons 2 and 4, one on the way. Mr. Hunt hired Pierre to translate and scout, to guide from St. Louis westward to Columbia's mouth. She crossed ranges and rivers, deserts so dry, crossed boundless prairies, mountains so high. Hunger and cold her sorrows were long. Walks far woman, her spirit brave and strong. What a tough woman, huh? Just imagine, after Astoria, back to Payette, where John Jacob Astor, fur traps, they said, Bannocks attacked, leaving every man dead. Walks far woman westward, with children she fled. She walked boundless prairies, rugged mountains high, crossed raging rivers, deserts so dry. Hunger and cold, her sorrows were long. Walks far woman, her spirit brave and strong. Winter storms trapped them high in the blues. She built a brush shelter to help them get through. Horse meat and berries helped them survive when winter storms melted. And westward they walked out alive. The woman then settled on French Prairie, known ever after as Madame Marie. At depth she was buried in the Church St. Louis, an honor that's given only for those with deep belief. She walked boundless prairies, rugged mountains high, crossed raging rivers, deserts so dry. Hunger and cold, her sorrows were long. Walks far woman, her spirit brave and strong. Thank you. So they had a massive boat wreck near present day Burley. They had this idea that they could build wooden canoes around present day Jackson Hole and just serenely glide down to the Pacific Ocean. Oh, thank you. You got something getting my allergies roaring up here, I'm afraid. So you can imagine taking a canoe through that. And that's before they got to American Falls and Shoshone Falls. And then there was still Hell's Canyon ahead. So it was a misguided thing. But at this set of rapids, the party got separated. Half of them on one side of the river, the other half on the other. They couldn't get across, so they split up into 3 or 4 groups, each to independently go all the way to, of course, it was Astoria, right? The name of the trading post that was going to be established. And one of those splits of the main party, led by a guy named David Thompson, one of the most amazing explorers of the American West, was the guy that actually saw most of Hell's Canyon. And then he had to kind of go up through the Seven Devils to get down to Lewiston and then on down the river. And the guy that led the party was a farmer, no experience in the West, Wilson Price Hunt. And he went back to St. Louis after all that trouble and decided he got to stay a farmer. So this poem I wrote about the trip from his point of view goes like this. Though long I've been a farmer, there's a story I must tell of a cursed mad river and a canyon straight from hell. To own the Oregon fur trade, that was Astor's dream. A trading post at Columbia's mouth, that was just part of his scheme. He'd take Northwest furs to China and then silk and tea to London. European goods he'd take back to New York and a fortune he'd make. He sent a boat around the Cape and an overland group by me from St. Louis to Pacific through wild, unknown country. Up the Missouri and across the plains, westward we did trail, and across the Rocky Mountains with untold travail. And often we were hungry and tired and wet and cold. The Indians always near, and sometimes they were fierce and bold. But that was mere child's play compared to what befell on that accursed mad river in a canyon straight from hell. The Cascades at Cauldron Lynn took some of our canoes. They took food, traps, goods, and our comrade Clapine, he died. Then starvation we faced. We wondered if we'd survive. We broke into small groups, struggling to stay alive, and we crossed the desert with food and water scarce. From the cliffs, we couldn't descend. We just watched the mad river flow. The river then veered north into a hellish canyon steep. Rapids and cliffs beset us, and the snow was growing deep. The mountains towered upward, but upward we couldn't go. The mad river's fierce current raced on below. Wet and sick and hungry, chilled by ice and snow, eating beaver skin and paws to keep us on the go. For 2 weeks we pushed north, facing death all the way, and at last we had to backtrack. The hellish canyon had won the day. And then we found a Shoshone camp, and they told us of a trail, 7 sleeps across a mountain where deep snow might prevail. The suffering was great and a struggle for every man, but at last we saw the river that to the ocean ran. And a week down the Columbia, and we were at its mouth, and we built Astor's Post for him to grow his wealth. But our sufferings had not ended. More hardship befell, but mostly we cursed that mad river and the canyon straight from hell. All right, we're going to do this more or less chronologically. This next song is one of the Idaho's truly great folk songs, and it's one of the 2 earliest known songs really about Idaho. And it has to do with the discovery of gold up in the salmon country in 1860, 1861, Clearwater and salmon country. And some of these miners had come up from California. They were 49ers. And finding gold was getting tough down there. And they heard, Idaho, we're going to go up there and get rich. And these guys came up and they got their butts kicked. And they went back home to California and they published this song. Remember, 1862 is middle of the Civil War, right? And they set the song to the melody of Dixie, which, by the way, was sung by both Union and Southern troops and was written in the state of Ohio. So he's just talking about all the trouble they had up in Idaho trying to get rich and failing. Oh, way up north where runs the salmon, lots of gold, there's no darn jam. Get away, up north to the salmon. So yank and pike and tuck and knot, don't again our luck to try. Get away, up north to the salmon. And I wish I was on salmon, a palmoolah. On salmon soil, I'll strike my pile and go strong on salmon. Away, I'll say away, and you answer, away. And then we sing together, away up north on salmon, away, answer it, away up north of salmon. I've got 2 darn old scrubby mules, which to pack the grub and tools. Get away, up north to the salmon. And Pike has got a braying jack to keep the engines from the track. Get away, up north to the salmon. And I wish I was on salmon, a palmoolah. On salmon soil, I'll make my pile and go strong on salmon. Away up north of salmon. Away. Play it now, Slim. Good job, Slim. I've got my outfit all complete, self-rise and flowering, lots of meat. Get away, up north through the salmon. 2 navy coats and a rifle gun to keep the redskins on the run. Get away, up north through the salmon. Then I wish I was on salmon. Apamula, I'll throw the dirt and tear my shirt to go it's strong on salmon. Away up north in salmon. Away. Way up north of salmon. Of course, there's got to be girls involved in the song, don't you think? So now goodbye to Susan Polly, Sister Jane, and Cousin Molly. Get away, up north through the salmon. I'm bound to rush like all creation, way up north of the great Snake Nation. Get away, up north through the salmon. And I wish I was on salmon, the Pamela. On salmon soil, I'll strike my pile and go strong on salmon. Away up north on salmon. Away up north on salmon. All right, let's stay up north here. Oops, I got it. One more. Cherokee Bob. Who knows about Cherokee Bob? A bunch of you people should. So in 1861, gold was discovered on the slopes atop Salmon River Canyon, and it was one of those booms. Thousands of people were in there overnight. It happened to be one of the worst winters in history in Idaho, and it was really tough going in there. So you had lots of men in there, not very many women, lots of booze, lots of young man attitudes. What could possibly go wrong in there? So this is another way people got to Idaho. This is the way the first big wave of Euro-Americans got to Idaho, to the gold camps. Because Oregon Trail notwithstanding, that was a death march to get through Idaho. They wanted to get through there as fast as they could, just like Lewis and Clark did. And very, very few of the Oregon Trailers remained in Idaho. They wanted the hell out of there and over to the Promised Land in the Willamette Valley, preferably. But there were guys like Cherokee Bob, and he was half Cherokee Georgian. He came out to get rich in the 1849 gold rush in California. Nothing but trouble. He found that mining was a lot tougher than he thought it should be. So he became a gunslinger and a gambler, and you know how that story goes. And it's said that Bret Hart, the great Western writer, may have created the myth of the fancy gunslinging gambler based on the story of Cherokee Bob. We'll see. Way up in Florence, Idaho, beneath the lodgepole pines, there stands a lonely marker, and on it are these lines. The Georgian H.J. Talbot, at the age of 29, January 5th, 63, he died, and here reclined. January 5th, 63, he died, and here reclines. Well, the boy ran west at 15 from home and family, proud of his southern heritage and his blood half Cherokee. He tried his hand at mining, but he found the work too hard. Known to all as Cherokee Bob, he turned the guns and cars. Known to all as Cherokee Bob, he turned the guns and cars. Well, trouble in California, well, trouble in Nevada too. So he headed north to Idaho in the rush of '62. In a gambling hall in Lewiston, red-haired Cynthia found him soon. They moved on up to Florence to run a wild saloon. They moved on up to Florence to run a wild saloon. Oh, New Year's Eve in Florence, it would be a gay affair. Red-haired Cynthia loved to dance, but the ladies wouldn't bite her there. So Jakey Williams sent her back to Cherokee Bob's saloon. Jakey knew that Bob would be a gunnin' for him soon. Jakey knew that Bob would be a gunnin' for him soon. Oh, New Year's Day was cold and clear when Jake and Bob would meet. And when the shooting ended, Bob lay dying in the street. The wild, fast life was over for that Georgia boy gone bad. The way it always seems to end for a gunslinging gambling lad. Oh, the way it always seems to end for a gunslinging gambling lad. Way up in Florence, Idaho, beneath the lodgepole pines, stands a lonely marker, and on it are these lines. The Georgian H.J. Talbot, at the age of 29, January 5th of '63, he died, and here reclines. January 5th of '63, he dies, and here reclines. So it had to end that way, didn't it? That was hardly unique, though. Right, Earl? It was a story that happened many times. Not enough girls and too much booze. Foster's grave over near Cottonwood. Who's been to Foster's grave or knows the story about it? Looks like Earl does, huh? Yeah. So this is a poem that was written by a woman from Duluth, Minnesota in 1905. She came to Grainesville to visit her sister. And they went out and they saw Foster's grave, and she learned about the legend and was inspired to publish this poem about it. So I'll let the poem tell the story. I'll just say that Foster was a half white, half Indian scout for the U.S. Army during the initial hostilities of the Nez Perce War in 1877. Away in North Idaho, where never a whistle blows, this is before the train came, and never the smoke from an engine blackens the winter snows, there's a shaft of pure white marble on a plain at the foot of a hill, where occasionally old fighters pass, by chance or by will. It marks the shrine of the plateau, the tomb of a runner brave. For that shaft of pure white marble stands guard at Foster's grave. Foster, a half-breed runner, fleet as a mountain deer, he spoke to the straggled people of an Andean ambush that was near. And down from the butte, with his rifle, spoke to the last. And they ran, the red-skinned vengeful warriors, and they got their valued prize. But the horsemen telling the story say that the runner fled with the ball in his heart for minutes before he toppled dead. Just how that man made it, the tale let history tell. I heard it told as we rode out one night to the spot where Foster fell, and awe came down with the moonlight over that spell-wrought place, born of the eerie silence and the solitude of peace. The Indian wars are over now, but the gunmen, red and white, pay tribute to the man asleep under the pillar white. And now where the springtime blesses the plain on the mountaintop, the roses riot above his head, and the passing ranchers stop to see if the fence needs mending and spell the story through, cut deep in the pure white marble and read by the very few. And far off the coyotes call, and the odor of pine from the mountains, towering shafts and a well-told tale. Here's a sight for them all. And whenever I hear of valor, of tribute paid to the brave, I'll go in thought on a long, long ride and linger at Foster's grave. And, I don't hear poetry like that anymore. And the part of it, I think, is that this was before electronic devices. On those long Duluth nights, they're longer than they are here by a little bit. What do you think people did? Well, sometimes they would write. They'd write poetry or songs or verse. That tradition is almost gone, isn't it? All right, we're going to go down into Hell's Canyon. I'll get this figured out someday, some year. This is one of the I call it a 5-star folk song about early Idaho. And it was written right after the massacre of the Chinese upriver, about 60 miles, is that about right? To Deep Creek? 50? And it was written by a fiddle player, Hell's Canyon fiddle player, right after the event. And I found many variants of this song, and I probably have 15 different verses on it, and I'm not going to subject you to all of those. But what's really remarkable about the song is that in only one verse are the Chinese mentioned. The rest of it is a rant about these horse thieves and cattlemen who, oh, by the way, killed the Chinese. So it's a tough thing, but it's a window into attitudes at that time and place. So apparently, at least to a lot of people in that area of Hell's Canyon, a horse or a cow was worth more than a Chinaman. So at any rate, we'll do like 5 verses of the song, you'll get the idea. Tis not long since I've learned by the laws of our land, the law-abiding citizens have taken in hand a well-known desperado and a horse brand or two. He's known on the trail as our Captain Old Blue. The roundhouse at Mackey's. By the way, I'm going to stop here. Anybody ever hear of the roundhouse at Mackey's? It's got to be a place name for somewhere on the Oregon or Washington side of Hell's Canyon where these guys hold up. I've never been able to figure that part of the song out. No takers on Mackey's? You know where that is? I want to talk to you after this program about that. The roundhouse at Mackey's is filled every night with horses and bummers of all types in sight. They run in stray horses and end makes an end. They rope and they brand on the flats at Blue's Den. There's Omar the Ranger. He sails on the trails. His equipments are graceful as horse eyes for sales. He's fond of the wildlife. He's a bold buckaroo. He'll live or he'll die by the hay with Old Blue. Went down on Snake River. No horse could he found. He thought of his dear friends he left behind. His limbs they were weary, he was darn hungry too, of prowling around on the trail with old Blue. It was late in the evening, they brained the last man, and then bid farewell to their Snake River band. For the officers were coming, not for the men that they slew, they saw, and they bound over our Captain Old Blue. So that's kind of rough business, isn't it? Anyway, Greg Noakes, as Greg Noakes spoken here, he wrote probably the definitive story of that whole incident and how it was kind of basically put aside for a long, long time. And he was an investigative reporter by training, and he got on the trail of it, and he uncovered the full story of the whole thing. So let's stay down in the Hells Canyon country, and let's talk about cattle ranching. Now, Earl will tell you too, I'm sure you'll agree, the reason there was a cattle industry in Idaho is because there was mining. Those men needed protein, and it was a long way to the next store back in the early days. So wherever you went in Idaho, there were cattle ranching that would arise to support it. Some places it persisted, such as the Owyhees, but it still persists in portions of the Seven Devils district too. These people, these ranchers, these great ranchers and stockmen came from all over the country. They didn't necessarily know one end of a cow from the other when they came out to the west, but they learned quickly, and they saw that there was a much steadier income selling cows and steaks than there was scratching around on the ground looking for gold. And more of them were successful on a fractional basis, I'm sure, doing that than in the mines. So I had to write, amazingly enough, I've never found a song or poem about any of these great stock barons of the region, which is, and, usually that's what cowboys do, right? They're very poetic and musical. So what are you going to do? Okay, here's a poem. The great Hells Canyon cattle and sheep barons, they were men of pluck and skill, intelligence and daring, tough, fair, hardworking men who started with little more than their grit and the shirt on their backs. They embodied the great American dream. Only one of the four stockmen we'll discuss was born into the stockman's life. The others came from wildly different landscapes and lifestyles, but they were not afraid to roll the dice in an unforgiving landscape, daring harsh weather, disease, wild predators, and economic downturns. And they succeeded beyond even their own ambitious goals. The first was young Charles Campbell. In 72, he left his family's Illinois home, and in Nevada, Charlie learned the ways of the West. By 79, he homesteaded on the Salmon-Weiser Divide. The Indian troubles past, he created the famous Circle C Ranch. Now, as you're driving into New Meadows from the north, that beautiful flat country where the little salmon meanders, that was the Circle C. Next was Frank Wyatt, who left Missouri in his teens. He worked his way west and he ranched in Colorado. And in 83, he trailed cattle to the lower Salmon and he prospered. His bow and arrow brand ran from Deer Creek on the Salmon to Pittsburgh Landing and across the Snake. But Bo was cruelly broken by the drought and the bad winter of 19. Charlie Campbell, he spawned a rambunctious young son named Albert. And in 1910, 21-year-old Albert borrowed $3,000 from his dad. Then he bought a small Seven Devils spread. His empire eventually developed into the Great OX Ranch and it ranged across the Snake into Oregon, and the OX still operates to this very day. Still one of the largest branches in Idaho. But not the least was sheepman George Spiropoulos. The 15-year-old Greek boy knew no English when he came to America in 1910, but by 1930, his sheep bands ranged from the Seven Devils into Oregon, and his new bride had a fine mansion. Against the odds, George avoided range wars with cattlemen and maintained lifelong friendships with them. Now, let me tell you a little bit how he found a wife. When he's probably like 29 or something, 20, 30, and was kind of set. His ranching was going, sheep herding was going well. So he wrote an uncle back in Greece and said, I need a wife. Can you find somebody? So he went back to Greece, and he took 2 weeks, and he picked one out and brought her back to his ranch high in the Seven Devils. Now imagine the culture shock that was. Didn't speak a lick of English. She knew nothing about cattle or ranching or anything else, but it worked. That's one way to do it, I suppose. But these powerful stockmen did not build their empires alone. Each had a strong woman to tend the homestead. The women corresponded and kept the books for the ranch. Mattie, Carolyn, Gracie, and Hio, they also kept the wild impulses of their cowboys in check. The great stock barons of Hell's Canyon are long gone, but you can sense their spirit if only you listen at a Seven Devils campfire, or the Lower Salmon Trail, or when you cast for cutthroats on Wild Horse Creek, or you watch the eagles soar over the Snake. Okay. So I spent a lot of time working on this Hell's Canyon project. That was the 23rd CD booklet project I've done by topic around the state of Idaho, either by area of the state or by topic. And some of those projects are up here on the table if you're interested after the program. Take a look. You have somebody in mind that has everything. I promise you they don't have everything. So I spent fair amount of time over in the Wallowa Valley, surely the most idyllic place in this entire state of Oregon. Love that area. How many are real familiar? Isn't it a great place? Yeah, I can see why Chief Joseph did not want to leave that behind. So this is a poem I ran across. It was written by a guy named Tom Swearingen. And Tom was basically the cowboy poet laureate of Oregon. He's a national award-winning cowboy poet. And this was an outstanding poem. I love this thing. And the best comes at the end. And it's about this young cowboy who was madly in love with a girl, but with cowboy wages of the time, when it was 1896, he couldn't afford to buy a ring. So, well, he had a plan. It was not a very good plan, and it paid him. You've no doubt heard some stories of the Wild and Woolly West, and you wondered if they could be true, if they could pass the test of actual, factual truthfulness, and not just some made-up tale and lore that some Hollywood writer conjured up a saga before. But not this story that I'm telling. No, folks, I'll be frank. The details actually happened, and you can take that to the bank. Which is not coincidentally where this all takes place. A story of love and bad decision-making, and then recovering from disgrace. The First Bank of Joseph, Oregon, 1896, the history shows. By the way, that's where the Wallowa County Historic Museum is located now. Makes the story even better. First Bank of Joseph, Oregon, 1896, the history shows, was held up by some outlaws and a local wanting to propose. Young Dave Tucker was a cowboy, and his wages kept him poor. He couldn't see his way to marrying until he had much more. His sweetheart's name was Minnie, and he so wanted her hand. But his meager cowhand savings would hardly buy a van. So when he heard that two stick-up men on the run, laying low, along with a Joseph bar owner, were planning to undergo a bank heist in that little town, Tucker thought that'd be the way. He could fatten up his bankroll and sweep Minnie away. So against his better judgment, love clouding his moral compass, he threw in with the outlaws and became part of the rumpus. With the barkeep standing lookout, the others rode up to the bank. They tied their horses, drew their guns, and they went in with Tucker watching flank. Stick 'em up, and leveled shotguns got the bank man's attention. And they took to cleaning out the place when a bystander's alarm caused intervention, which soon led to an army of armed locals in pursuit. Bullets flying, one robber dying, another escaping with the loot, and our man, Dave Tucker, hit with buckshot in his side and a bullet that 2 fingers. But more than that, his pride. All of Joseph knew Dave. They were shocked at his mistake, getting caught up in this bank heist, his future now at stake. Sentenced to 6 years in the Oregon State Pen. He used that time to contemplate and plan for the day when he'd get out and start to working on rebuilding his broken life. And his dream of someday, if he deserved her, taking Minnie for his wife. His sentence was shortened for good behavior, and he set out to mend his harm. He moved back into Joseph and with hard work bought a farm. And in time, he built savings and won back the town's favor, plus the hand of his sweet Minnie. By all accounts, he was a fine neighbor. Now, the story could just end here with them living out their life, a hardworking, honest stockman and his faithful, trusting wife. But there's a better ending and a real heartwarming turn about character and kindness and other lessons we might learn. Fast forward to 1928, 32 years past Dave's fall. He invested in First National Bank of Joseph, successor bank of his armed withdrawal. So complete was his redemption, so much trust had he re-earned, he was elected vice president, and no one was concerned. That's one of my all-time favorite cowboy poet compositions. Now, what in the world did I do with my switcheroo? There we go. Let's move along here in time. I should have brought a guitar stand, I guess. Well, nothing wrong with the floor. Now, Dan introduced me as a historian, but I'm not a historian. My knowledge of Idaho is broad and about that thick. What I am is a teller of historical anecdotes using music and poetry as the vehicle. And it's really funny, the state historian and I would sometimes play different times, come to the same place at different times. Now, I like to say, Keith would tell the story from 50,000 feet. I'm down here in the mud and the grime telling it from the common person's story. And they're different stories, but they're closely interrelated too. So I love finding these stories that just, I say, tell something about the culture of early Idaho. So we're going to stay in Hell's Canyon. Oh, I keep getting this wrong. And we're going to talk about, there we go, an amazing guy named Hannibal F. Seven Devils Johnson. Spent 30 years of his life in the Seven Devils. Let me count the ways this Renaissance man played out. He was an herbal medicine man. He was a salesman. He was a preacher. He was an orator. He was a prospector, a miner, a fiddle player, and a politician. He was the first state senator from Adams County, and he was elected on the populist/socialist ticket. So Idaho is no stranger to social trends from time to time. So imagine now you're up in the Seven Devils mining camp, 1895, and Hannibal has just published this 135-page book of poems, songs, and essays. He breaks out his fiddle, probably broke out some whiskey too. I'm pretty sure that barleycorn was there. And he played this song that he wrote about the Seven Devils mines. Then you get to sing along here. The dig, boys, dig, let us the rich or fine. Open up in handsome style the Seven Devils mine. Now you all know Oh Susanna, right? That's the melody he chose for it. So come all you bold adventurers and listen to my song about the Seven Devils mine. I will not take you long. Those lines of melt that lately found display the rich or bright, and millions yet beneath the ground is bound to see the light. And when you pack your old cayuse, start to make a raid, and stop upon a grassy spot to let that equine graze. You're liable at any time to meet a rattlebug. And don't forget the snake bite cure in the old brown jaw. Then dig, boys, dig, let us the rich or fine, and open up in handsome style the Seven Devils mine. And when you reach the devil mines, all filled with wind and gush, don't mope about and hang your head, you'd make those devils blush. Shoulder up your pick and pan and take your shovels too. And when you reach a rich ore vein, pop the devils through. And when the rock becomes so hard you can no longer pick, don't hang your head and look so sour, you'd make the devils sick. Then seize your drill and hammer, put down a 4-foot hole, and charge it a well of dynamite and let the thunder roll. Then dig, boys, dig, let us the rich or fine, and open up in handsome style the Seven Devils mine. I would love to have been at that event. Wouldn't that be fun? Hang out with those guys. And when we're down 100 feet with rich ore on the dump, the money kings will all take hold and make the devils hump. And when we sell our mines to wealth, we'll have money, boys, to spend. We'll put our plated harness on and visit all our friends. Well, when a man has wealthy grown, the past is all forgot. He's honored upon love and raised with a drunken sot. And as our wealth accumulates, the ladies all will smile. We'll bid the devils hey goodbye and live in handsome style. Dig, boys, dig, let us the rich or fine, and open up in handsome style. One more time. Then dig, boys, dig, let us the rich or fine, and open up in handsome style the Seven Devils mine. Wrong again, huh? right. So, the problem with the Seven Devils district wasn't any ore there. First of all, how the heck do you get it out of there? And secondly, the geology is so broken up, you can find a rich finding on the surface, and 2 feet in, it's gone. You know, who knows where it went? Lewiston, it's kind of a central point for a number of gold rushes. Thunder Mountain, a minor one in the Hoodoos, Hell's Canyon, Florence, even up into British Columbia. You could get a boat this far and then overland to British Columbia. This is a song about a boom that happened around 1898 upriver, where the Imnaha River comes into the Snake. How far is that from here? 60 miles, something like that, 40 miles. It's not all that far. One day, so the story goes, a mining engineer was visiting with a rancher on the Imnaha River. He saw these rocks that were bright green. This is the time when the copper mining was really exploding everywhere because America was being electrified. Copper was finally worth something. So he tried to get the location of the rocks from the rancher, and the rancher said, "What are you talking about? I forget, you know." Until the miner went away, then he went out and staked a bunch of claims. His courage to do it. You could see the gleam in the miner's eye. So it stoked a boom, but really about the only people that made any money was the rancher who got 20,000 or so for selling the claims to some businessmen here in Lewiston. And the Lewiston businessmen who went back east and sold a bill of goods to a bunch of Eastern industrialists for $1 million or $2 million. And there wasn't anything in the mine, it turned out. That hole in the hill is still there. You can understand, you can still walk through it. You go in on the Snake River side and come out on the Imnaha River side. We'll let the song tell the story. Rocks of bright green on the shelf gleam, catching the old miner's eye. He asked where the big rocks is found. The rancher gave no reply. The miner departed. The rancher then started to where he would stake out his claim. Where Imnaha meets the Snake, a fortune he'd make. The Eureka mine would be famed. The rancher then sold to businessmen both downriver at Lewiston town. They made a plan, and back east they ran, where wealthy investors are found. A mine town and mill, quickly they'd build, shops and saloons would abound. A tunnel they'd drive through the divide, surely rich ore would be found, surely. They even built 2 steamboats for this thing, for a hole in the ground that didn't have any minerals in it. And so I've read, over 1,000 men were in there at one time. And yes, they did. They built a town, saloons, and the mills. I think the old mill is still gone, but probably the rock foundation you can still see. A steamboat they'd make, and on it they'd take men and supplies to the mine. On her 13th trip, a big rock she hit, to the bottom of Snake she reclined. When a year passed, they hit an impasse, a street they couldn't find. Eureka was toast, gone like a ghost, like many a Hell's Canyon mine. For the feds later took their experts to look or overlook or at the mine. They found a mill and a hole in the hill. No copper or gold did they find. Was Eureka a fake by swindlers and rake, or an honest mistake gone away? We'll never know what really showed. Eureka could never pay. Now, that's hardly an unusual story in Western mining history. And real money came from selling stock, whether it was worth anything or not. Well, now we're going to come back here to Lewiston. So I found this piece of sheet music at the ILO Volmer, is that how you say it? Historical Society. And it was Opus 43 by the Sisters of the Visitation, who came to Lewiston around 1900 or so and established an academy for girls. Now, I don't know if this was for really high-achieving girls or maybe girls that had a problem of some kind. Who knows? What I do know is that this song really caught my attention. It was written right here, and we recorded this in a style of music that was very popular from the mid-1850s to about 1920, when electrification made jazz a big deal. You know, microphones and electric instruments and that kind of thing. And that style was a piano and a banjo played in a 5-string style known as the classic banjo style. So no, Earl Scruggs did not invent 3-finger picking. That was around a long time before that. In fact, you can hear a lot of the Earl stylings if you listen to classical banjo from the 1800s. So Sean Rogers, a good friend and excellent piano player, and I recorded it in the old classic banjo piano style of the late 1800s. And it goes like this. The nuns were rocking. Isn't that awesome? You can see them dancing in their black habits, right? And maybe one of them on piano really getting into it. This is the march part. The two-step part. Back to the march. I wish I could find more of their music. Opus 43, so there's at least 42 other they wrote. Probably destroyed in the fire. I can just picture the nuns, in black habit and just probably after a little wine, having a really great time. All right, let's keep moving. So we're back to sort of ranching and more. The great OX Ranch I talked about earlier. So I'm told the cowboys were always kind of a cantankerous old curs. And one of them was particularly obnoxious. His name was Mac Myers. And he decided he just needed to get away from all this. So he found an abandoned homestead down in the bottom of Hell's Canyon. But unfortunately, the Hall Ranch used a trail that went right by the homestead. And they had a habit of getting into his garden. That's a shooting offense, right? Right up here in the back country. It's as bad as stealing a horse, ruining your garden that you need to get by. So this whole thing played out around 1904, May of 1904. I'll let the song tell the story. Mac Myers looked for solace where others were afar. Deep down in Hell's Canyon, had a homestead on Big Bar. He's sweet as sour milk. That's what some folks said. Best leave that man alone, or you could wind up dead. The Hall Ranch trailed their cattle along a creek next to Mac's. At times those pesky cows ate his garden for a snack. Mad as hell, Mac declared, "I'll shut your cow trail down." The cowboys laughed at Mac. Trouble was sure to come. In Hell's Canyon country, in the distant past, men were tough, women too, scores were settled fast. Cowboys on a homestead, don't let your cattle run, and give your due respect to an old coot with a gun. In May 1904, two cowboys on a drive trailed cattle from the Snake up the low divide. At the creek next to Mac's, they'd rest beneath a pine. Their cattle found his garden, and on it they did dine. Well, Mac grabbed his rifle, and he hastened up the trail. Somewhere below broke saddle, well, tragedy availed. Mac's 30-30 laid George Brownlee dead. His partner took a bullet, and he rode to the ranch ahead. In Hell's Canyon country, in the distant past, men were tough, women too, scores were settled fast. Cowboys on a homestead, don't let your cattle run, and pay your due respects to an old coot with a gun. A whitebird party set out to run Mac to the ground. Without a fight they found him, and they brought him back to town. They'd try old Mac in Grangeville for shooting Brownlee down, but he was lynched on a cottonwood 2 miles out of town. In the Hell's Canyon country, in the distant past, men were tough, women too, scores were settled past. Cowboys on a homestead, don't let your cattle run, and give your due respect to an old coot with a gun. All right, I'm going to do 2 more songs and call it an evening here, and go on up for a meet and greet after that. We're going to have Q&A, a little Q&A after I'm done singing here. Okay. How many are familiar with Copperfield Campground upriver? Beautiful place. Idaho Power as part of their penance for building dams in Hell's Canyon. In addition to doing fish hatcheries, they have these beautiful campgrounds. But oh no, in 1913 there, you would have found the wildest, rip-roaringest mining camp in the American West. And so the story goes, the Baker County Sheriff and District Attorney wouldn't go near that place. The copper mine there failed at that time. The attempt to build Oxbow Dam failed, and therefore the spur railroad line that ran in there from Huntington was having a tough time too. So you had many hundreds of men, money in their pocket, and every vice known to man available to them. What could possibly go wrong? So I'll tell you what could go wrong. It seems like at every good party, every good time, there's always somebody willing to spoil the whole thing, right? And somebody wrote a letter to Governor Oswald, who was a rabid prohibitionist. I'm sure he said something like, "This shall not stand on my watch." So he sent his 4'10" diminutive secretary, probably weighed 85 pounds, dripping wet, down to Reed to declare martial law in the place. You can just imagine how that went over. Oh, look at that little girl, blah, blah, blah. But you know, a year later, Copperfield was nothing. But during the event, so it worked. During the event, it became a national story. It was papers all over the country. I mean, it's got everything. It's got heroin. It's got a bad guy. It's got sex. It's got booze. It's got everything, you know, to make a great sensational story. So I found this reference to a song that was written at the time, was performed in burlesque halls in Portland, called "I Could Live Forever with a Girl Like You" from Copperfield. And I looked really hard to find that song. I could never find it. And I'm pretty sure I know what it was all about. And you just imagine the song being sung in a burlesque hall at the time, you know. So what are you going to do? Yeah. In 1913, we had one hell of a time at the Oxbow on mighty Snake River, drinking moonshine and blackberry wine. No work at the dam or the railroad, so we ran hell every day, drinking, fighting, cussing and gambling with sporting girls we love to play. One thing for sure, as I was born, I could live with a Copperfield girl. Go-getters wrote to Governor Oz, that teetotaling son of a gun, close down the saloons, flush all the booze, chase sporting girls out of town. So the governor sent Hobbs to Copperfield, there to declare martial law. She left the train, left on the train, the governor's marshals remain. I quick had to choose a good sporting girl, and we left Copperfield on the run. Play it, Slim. And now it's 50 years later. Copperfield ain't much to see. No slots or saloons, no sporting girls, no dance halls where we can swirl. But I'm still with my Fanny Marie, my sporting girl still at my side. Lord, we had fun, seeing the world had a family of 10 on the run. And I know I done right long ago on that night when I picked out my Copperfield girl. All right. So thank you all for coming out tonight. This is what I do in retirement. People ask me, why do you do this? Well, I say, oh, some people volunteer at the museum. Some people go to Mexico to build houses for the poor. Some people work in soup kitchens. Some people get involved in politics. This is what I do. And I played music all my life. And I play banjo in a progressive bluegrass band called Chicken Dinner Road, which plays regionally. And all that's great fun. But you know what? It's great fun and people love it, and that's good. But you don't leave any footprints. And in this project, the idea is to preserve some of these stories, songs and poems that were written back in the days, or to celebrate the stories in music and poetry. And I like doing this too, but you know, the real preservation is when you publish stuff and you get it into libraries, major libraries. If a good story never happened if it doesn't get written down. So that's what I do. For 20 years, I've been chasing these songs and stories. And if you have, I've picked all the low-hanging fruit. If you have some papers from your great-grandparents, there might be a poem or a song in there of interest. So take a look. The easy stuff I found, and now people have to bring stuff to me. I've been in every library and museum in Idaho. I keep searching the internet, and with more and more historical papers being digitized, there's always more to find. So you see what I'm after, right? Songs of the story songs about real people and events. So I'm going to close with a song that's really special to me. And I found it when I was doing field work over in the Wallowa Valley. And somebody said, you know, you're from West Virginia. This is a story you might appreciate. Towards the end of the 1800s, an itinerant preacher from the coal fields of southern West Virginia brought his extended family out to the Wallowa Valley, and he established a farming community, not logging, not ranching, a farming community. He called Promise, after the land of promise in the Bible. And so, well, that's pretty cool. I think I might want to learn more about that, and maybe write a song about it. So, no, we already wrote a song about it. Oh, cool. And yeah, and you know, some of the descendants of George Washington Carver, the guy that brought it, the patriarch, they're still in the valley here, and they wrote the song, and they're musicians, and they recorded this song. Even better. And oh, by the way, there's a fiddle player here in town, a really good fiddle player, and he plays fiddle with tinges of Southern West Virginia fiddle styles after all these years. So, whoa! So I listened to the song, and it was such a great song. And even better, the one of the high school classes that Joseph, which can't have 15 or 20 students in it per class, right? Surely not that, no more than that. They made this beautiful video as a class project highlighting the song. The song would play as the slides flip through. So I understand the terrible working conditions and dangerous conditions and the violence between mine operators and miners back in West Virginia 100 years ago and more. So it goes like this. Emerging from the darkness in the mines of West Virginia, looking onward to the promise of a new and brighter day, of a new and brighter day. So we left there, traveling heavy, westward bound to our rebirth, with the grace of God to guide us to the arms of Mother Earth, to the arms of Mother Earth, to the promised land I promise we will go. The song of these blue mountains call us home. Tallest pines and the greenest meadows, fertile ground, new seed to start, where the deepest snows of winter melt away with the fire in our hearts, melt away with the fires in our hearts, to the promised land I promise we will go. The song of these blue mountains call us home, and from these promised hills we'll never go, and here our spirits are forever home. Thank you very much.